What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another episode of Player Ratings as we drew 1-1 with Everton. And let's get straight into it. Starting off with Hugo Lloris. It was a return to the lineup for our captain and our goalkeeper. We both give him a 5. There were some nervy moments playing it out the back, some poor distribution, playing it out of sight. But he did make a couple of good saves on the day, more routine than anything else. And I don't think he could have got anywhere near Michael Keane's goal.
Yeah, people criticising him for the goal, I think, a bit ridiculous. I know he didn't dive, but he was getting nowhere near that. For me, I would have played Forster. I said that before the game. I thought Lloris did not look comfortable when he was coming for crosses. He was flapping at a lot of things and struggling to get to some of the balls into the box. And yeah, playing out the back as well, he looked quite dodgy. Putting our own players under pressure didn't help, but there were some decent saves in there which kept the score, kept us in the lead up until the 90th minute. So there were some good things, but most of all, I just wouldn't have thrown him in this game.
Yeah, all right. Moving on to Cristian Romero. 7s all round from us. In my opinion, our best player on the day. Proactive defending, aggressive defending, helping out the attacks. He was really, trying to, at times, do it on his own, go forward and trying to produce attacks for us. It was him and his good work inside the box that won us that penalty, that put us 1-0 up as well. But look, his distribution in the second half, there were a couple of moments where he played poor passes, but apart from that, I thought he played really well.
He seemed to be the only player really trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck and trying to drag us to victory for a lot of the time. And it was really frustrating when a lot of these players didn't have the same mentality as Cristian Romero, and that was a really frustrating thing. And I agree with you. I think he was probably our most consistent player on the day, probably the only player who played well in both halves. And apart from a bit of some sloppy passing late in the game, I thought he really tried, and it was frustrating. The rest of the team did match him.
Yeah. Moving on to Eric Dier, the middle of the back three. Sim gives him a 3. I gave him a 4. It was a game of two halves for Dier, to be honest. I thought first half he actually played well. He was getting his pings on point out to Perisic and out to Porro. And he was actually providing quite positively to us and defending fairly well. Second half was an absolute shit show from Eric Dier. And it came in the first minute. He presented Everton with a good chance. Luckily, they shot over the bar. But time and time again, he was trying to play out the back and making absolutely atrocious passes, putting us under pressure time and time again. And just another shocking display from Eric Dier.
Yeah, and there was just no leadership, just panicking, no sense of like calming everything down and playing the passes like he was in the first half. It was really bad to see in that second. That's why I've marked him down as a 3. Even though in the first half he did have was having a decent game, wasn't able to sustain it. And that's always the case with Dier. You can have good moments, but you always know those lapses of concentration around the corner, and that's exactly what happened.
Moving on to Clement Lenglet, Sim gives him a 3. I gave him a 4. Again, I thought he started the game fairly well. He was one of our better players, calm and composed, I thought, but it was anything but that in the second half. He got that yellow card. He was getting bullied off the ball at times in that second half, and he just couldn't seem to do anything, to be honest, in that second half. He ultimately got taken off, and the player that was brought on was even worse.
Yeah, I thought when he was asked to anticipate things, make tackles, he was looking pretty decent. I actually think he was a bit out of sync with Perisic a lot of the time in that first half, but he did look vulnerable in one-on-one situations, and Iwobi was able to get past him a couple of times, and he didn't look completely comfortable. Second half, he lost all composure, wasn't able to find a teammate with any of his passes, was taken off for Davinson Sanchez because he was failing to deal with a lot of the set pieces, and it looked like Everton was going to score from that avenue, but Sanchez wasn't any better, so it wasn't a great substitution in the end. But I thought maybe, Lenglet against 10 men, you would have thought he would have been composed and would have helped us, but in the end didn't really do that, so really disappointing day for him.
Moving on to Pedro Porro at right wing back. Sim gives him a 5. I gave him a 4, and started off the game really well, finding himself in so many good opportunities and positions around the back. Eric Dier was finding him time and time again. Yeah, his final product was found wanting a little bit, but apart from that spell in the opening 20 minutes, half an hour, he kind of vanished out the game.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments in the second half where he actually did get some good crosses in, but unfortunately wasn't able to make him pay. I think Perisic nearly got on the end of one, and so did Sonny. Didn't quite happen. First half, though, was when he was really making waves and causing a danger. There was one moment when he was arriving at the back post of a Perisic cross, and it wasn't for a last-ditch McNeil intervention. He would have been on the end of another goal for Pedro Porro, and right at the beginning of the game, he got in behind really well and nearly found Harry Kane in the centre. Was a good save from Pickford. So there were good moments, but I agree, he tired. I think McNeil was able to last the game a lot longer than him, and for the last 20 minutes or so, he just wasn't able to get up the pitch at all, and we didn't see any of him. So that was really, really disappointing. But at least he was one of the players for me, even when we were struggling, he was trying to get the ball down and play and not just lumping the ball forward aimlessly. But unfortunately, he wasn't really able to affect the game.
Moving on to Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Sim gives him a 5, I gave him a 4. I mean, very on in the very first few minutes of the game, there was a really sloppy moment from Højbjerg, letting Everton in. But I think after that, he gathered himself, he started to play really well, he was really combative in the middle of the park, and he was doing a really good job for the team with his tackles and interceptions and trying to drive us forward at times. But second half, I don't know what was said or what happened to him, but he was absolutely atrocious, just losing the ball, lack of care, lack of anything really from Højbjerg. I can't remember anything positive that he did in that second half, and I was so frustrated with him.
Yeah, I thought especially once we took the lead, his passing was completely aimless. He seemed to be just playing blind passes over the top to absolutely no one, lacking all composure. And I thought the midfield as well was getting completely overrun, even against 10 men, and it was really, really hard to watch. I thought he was probably one of our better players in the first half. He was making some really good passes, dominating the midfield as well, high energy. But maybe he just seemed to tire in that second half, and he didn't take any responsibility whatsoever. Whenever he got the ball, he just pumped it forward without looking, and it led to Everton regaining some momentum in that second half and letting them back in the game, and it was very, very frustrating. So poor from Højbjerg in the end.
Moving on to Ollie, Skipp, 4s all round from us. And this was a weird one with Skipp because first half was probably, I think, was poorer than his second half, to be honest. Lack of care on the ball, sloppy touches on the ball. He did work hard, so you've got to give him credit to that. I thought he actually did improve in the second half, not by much. It's a very slight improvement where, his kind of ability on the ball wasn't as lacking as it was in the first half, but still really not a good display from Ollie Skipp, and probably his poorest display since that first introduction to the team against Milan.
Yeah, it was really disappointing, to be honest, because it was some of our best moments. He was kind of at the heart of it. Then he kind of overran the ball, and the chances went begging, and that was really, really frustrating from that point of view. I think off the ball didn't do too much wrong, but in the second half, again, he was overrun, wasn't able to get near the likes of Onana and Idrissa Gueye, and that was really frustrating, and he was putting us into trouble a couple of moments. But most disappointing was his lack of care when we were in really promising positions and the chances went to waste, and a lot of that was because of his poor touches. So disappointing from Ollie Skipp on the day.
Next up, Decky, Dejan Kulusevski, 5s all round from us. And there were some really nice moments in there from Decky where he was looking to take on his man. It looked like he had the beating of his man at ease, to be honest. Quite a number of times he was just beating him. But I thought his end product, his crosses in the box, were pretty poor on the day. And again, as the game went on, he waned in influence. And as Everton came on top of us, we had no real attacking output. Yeah,
his dribbling was good, but he wasn't able to kind of make anything of it in terms of chance creation from his dribbling scenarios. There was one moment, obviously, he slipped in Heung-min, but he was strayed just offside anyway. But that was probably one of his better moments in the game. Second half, again, anonymous, to be honest, compared to the first half, and wasn't able to get on the ball in the areas that we know we want him to get on the ball. He did have a chance after Everton had equalised to maybe steal 3 points, but kind of snatched at it, and the chance went begging. And he had another chance in the second half as well, where we had like a 3-on-2 in our favour, and he went with the cross with his right foot and wasn't able to pull it off. So that was disappointing, but yeah, I thought dribbling wise, he was good on the day.
Moving on to Ivan Perisic, Sim gives him a 5, I gave him a 4. And the early stages were really good from Perisic, really good crosses in the box, feeding Harry Kane. But apart from those early crosses, I fail to remember anything that he did to impact the game, and I thought he was fairly poor after that.
Yeah, he put in a really good cross early on for Harry Kane, where he headed wide, and he was actually causing Seamus Coleman a few problems. But again, wasn't able to link up with Heung-min Son, which is something that is put on him quite often. Defensively as well, in the second half, he was part of the players where he was just lacking care on the ball and giving it away and being sloppy, and it was very frustrating. And once he wasn't putting in those crosses like he was, he nearly found Porro as well with another good cross in the first half. But when he wasn't doing that, unfortunately, he was a bit of a liability, and that is the case at the moment with Perisic. So better on the ball than recently, but again, still not good enough.
Moving on to Harry Kane, Sim gives him a 7, I gave him a 6. He was very involved in the early stages, a header over the bar, a header saved, and he was really getting in and amongst it. He was trying to hover outside the area and play quite deep and get those crosses into the box, but I felt like it was never really going to work because the players that he was trying to cross them into were just way too small and were never going to win the ball. Like Pedro Porro was trying to win headers at the back post, and it was just never going to happen against the Everton defence. And he kind of waned from influence in the game until the red card came, where he got Decore sent off with a push in the face. And then after that, it became a struggle for Harry Kane, and he was pretty isolated and couldn't really make anything happen.
Yeah, I obviously thought he was our most threatening player on the day. He was probably unlucky not to have more than a goal with some of the chances he had, and he took the penalty really well, had a shot cleared off the line as well, and he showed a bit of fight. But he also did some sloppy things. He tried to nutmeg an Everton player, which set Everton on a counter attack, which could have cost us. I thought near the end he was actually shirking some challenges quite worryingly, and that made me quite angry when I was watching that. And at the end of the day, obviously we end up dropping points, and he could have done more to impact the game. But I did think he was probably our best attacker on the day, and he did show some fight throughout.
Yeah. Last but not least, for the starting 11, Heung-min Son. Sim gives him a 4, I gave him a 3. Another game alongside Ivan Perisic, and another no-show for Heung-min Son. And you're looking at some of these players out on the pitch. Some had good first halves and poor second halves. He just had poor first half and a poor second half. There was, every time he got the ball, couldn't do anything with it. He lost the ball pretty much every time. No real link-up play with anyone really on the pitch. And just a really poor display all round, to be honest.
Yeah, and he just wasn't able to run in behind, wasn't able to try and stretch the Everton back line. He kept coming towards the ball in the halfway line and picking things up in areas that he's not comfortable, and he kept losing the ball very, very cheaply. Wasn't able to get many shots off. Everton had him well shackled. We always tried giving him the ball to feet, and they kept just tackling him from behind and easily winning to taking the possession off him, and he just wasn't really able to impact the game, to be honest. And yeah, Perisic as well, getting in those wide areas, which means those were off limits in a way for Sonny. And when the crosses come in, those crosses aren't really crosses that Son's ever going to get on the end of. So it's a very frustrating situation.
Moving on to the substitutes, Davinson Sanchez came on for Clement Lenglet. 2s all round from Sanchez, and that's probably giving him a kind mark, to be honest, because he came on and all he did was pretty much put us under pressure and lose the ball. From the first second that he came on, he got the ball at that left centre-back role, and he just gives the ball straight back to Everton, and that was a consistent theme as it happened time and time again. When you're bringing on a player like Davinson Sanchez, when you need to just keep the ball and be calm and composed, what the hell's the point?
It didn't make sense to me. He never looked comfortable playing on the left when he was trying to use his left foot, and just kept giving the ball away with his passing. I guess he came on to try and combat Everton from set pieces, but he still looked quite dodgy from him as well. There was even a moment where an Everton player played a long ball forward, and all the Spurs players were shouting at him to leave the ball and see it out for a goal kick, and he ended up heading it back to the Everton player, and they ended up putting us sustaining some more pressure, and he just added chaos to when we needed some calmness, and that was a real worry, to be honest. And wasn't a good cameo whatsoever for me from Sanchez.
And Lucas Moura, wow, look at these ratings. Sim gives him a 0, I give him a 1. And basically, he came on, I think, with around about 10 minutes to go. 6 minutes later, he makes that challenge on Michael Keane and he gets sent off. And that's pretty much the only influence he had on the game.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was his first touch. Also, he he did the challenge off the back of giving the ball away. He gives the ball away with a touch with his head, and then he overruns the ball, and then he comes in with this thigh high challenge, not thigh. What do you call it? Yeah, just a high challenge basically, and it was just terrible. It was a leg breaker. Could have been really bad for Michael Keane. Luckily, it wasn't as much force as it could have been. Right for red card and a horrific cameo, and I just didn't understand why he was brought on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he gets just a 1 just for entering the field.
I guess, well, he didn't slip when he entered the field, maybe. Yeah, there you go. They spelt his name right on his shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And last but not least, the manager, Stellini, 3s all round from us. And after everything that's happened with Antonio Conte, you're thinking, all right, Conte's gone now. There's an opportunity for Stellini to put his own print on it alongside Ryan Mason. But it was a carbon copy. It was exactly the same. And I don't know what else we were expecting, to be honest. I mean, I thought I was a bit deluded in saying, the shackles would be off. We might see something different. But we just didn't. And it was exactly the same. Conte could have just been the manager yesterday and no one would have batted an eyelid. The game management was absolutely horrific. The changes that he made that we mentioned before, Davinson Sanchez, it's just not the right man at the right time for that moment in the game. And Lucas Moura as well. When you've got Danjuma waiting in the wings, what's the point of having him in the squad when you would prefer to have Lucas Moura out of position in Danjuma's position? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So the game management, shocking. Tactics, shocking. Pretty much everything was shocking.
Yeah, I wasn't happy with Stellini whatsoever. I thought the way he managed that game after we went down to 10 men was horrific. Couldn't get control of the team and control of that game. He allowed Everton to get back in the game, and instead of showing confidence in his team and making some attacking subs and trying to seal the game with a 2-0 to get in the second goal, he makes defensive subs, he makes negative subs, giving the impression that we're just trying to see out the game at 1-0 even against 10 men and that we're struggling to control them. Making subs where instead of having players who are more composed on the ball and are more likely to keep it, he has players who are more likely to give it away and just more physical players. And that was really, really frustrating aspect of Stellini's management. No creativity really with the tactics, just let's copy and paste what Conte did and keep that basically. So really bad day, right, bad beginning to his interim tenure for Stellini.
All right, well, there you have it. That is the player ratings for the tragic 1-0 draw at Goodison Park last night. Let me know in the comment section below what your ratings are and let us know what you thought of our ratings as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always,
come on, you Spurs.